are trading card games just skill based or are they luck? And the answer is yes. If we take a look at the very foundation of a TCG, which is its distribution model, it is luck based because we are opening randomized packs of cards. This goes out the window if you're creating a living card game where every card is available through one box purchase. Now, this can be a positive if you are making a homemade TCG, because to have that desire for a rarity and collectability, you need a large audience to play your TCG. The more people that want your cards, the more valuable those cards become. So by having all of your cards available in one box to buy and build, you are removing that randomness, but also taking away the desire to collect more. So now that we've addressed distribution, we can move on to the actual trading card game. And this article is what inspired me to make this video today. So why are card games so popular even to this day? And I know it's not referring to TCGs, but it is referring to card games in general. So I'm just going to go over this. Card games are portable. This is very useful. This is why we desire them over a lot of board games a lot of times. We can just buy a simple pack of cards like that, put them in our pocket, and then go and see our friends. Card games are speedy. Generally, TCGs do take less time than other board games, so there is a desire like that as well. They are very handy that way. Card games bring healthy competition to the table, and for younger people it is a good way of introducing competition on an intellectual level rather than a physical level, which some people may not be endowed with. Card games help with socializing, this is true, and some card games are based on luck. Now this is what got my attention, so I'm just going to read this. There are various types of card games available. Some are purely skill games, where one has to be highly skilled in order to win over all the other players. And others are luck games, where there are no guarantee who will win the game. No player has control over the luck game, no matter how skilled he or she is. This makes these games very addicting, and every player wants to try his or her luck and see if he or she can get the winning hand or not. But that isn't just a blanket statement. There is always a draw to those gambling type games where you think you can beat the odds. But there are several types of players, and this is something that I wanted to address. So moving on, I want to go back to Mark Warsaw's 20 Lessons in 20 Years of Magic the Gathering. Now I'm only taking a look at lesson 15 of this, but if you want to see the full video, I have a link in the description above of a video where I do a reaction to the full video, and then in that video there is a link to the original video if you want to check that out. And I would very much recommend it if you are getting into TCG design. But moving on, let's have a little listen to Mark here, see what he has to say.
Number 15. So I created something a while back called player psychographics. I took an advertising class, as I told you earlier. There's a concept in advertising called psychographics where you're trying to understand the emotional needs of your audience. Why are they buying your product? And so the idea was I created these 3 psychographics to explain why our players played the game. What emotionally did they get out of the game? So first, there was Timmy or Tammy. There was Johnny or Jenny. And there was Spike.
So carefully listen to how he describes each of these characters, okay? So this is the psychology behind a lot of players and what they want out of a trading card game.
Timmy or Tammy wants to experience something. It's very much about the visceral thrill, the excitement, or it could be the emotional bonding with friends, but it was about how they felt about it, how it made them feel.
The swings, the highs and the lows, the excitement of it.
Jenny or Johnny wanted to express something. The game was about showing other people something about themselves through the lens of the game, through their deck, through cool card combos, through some means by which they can express something about themselves.
I always find Jenny and Johnny are the ones that like to build the decks and experiment more. So they're more about the early game, the guinea pig testers, I suppose. They put all these weird combinations together.
Spikes want to prove something, that the game is a tool to show that they're capable of doing something. Often winning, but that's not the only thing Spike can be focused on. But they use the game as a resource to prove they're capable of doing something. So let's talk about Ravnica in 2005. We made a card called Molten Sentry. So here's what it did.
Right, so
You
this
flipped
is a
the
good
coin when it
example.
came into play, and then either you got a 5-2, meaning 5 power, 2 toughness, or you got a 2 power, 5 toughness. And both of them were interesting. Both were balanced. They both were interesting things you could get. So let's look at the psychographics and examine this. I'm going to take Johnny and Jenny out because this card really isn't for them. Okay, so we got coin flipping. Oh, Timmy likes coin flipping. That's exciting. What's going to happen? Timmy enjoys that. We had balanced outcomes. Okay, Spike likes that. Spike, like, both things are good things, and I have interesting choices. Spike enjoys that. But let's flip them for a second. Balance outcomes. Well, that's not really what Timmy's looking for. Timmy's looking for exciting things. When he flips the coin, ooh, is a bad thing or a good thing? He wants an exciting moment. And coin flipping, Spike doesn't want to flip a coin. He's all about skill. He wants to win. Yes, they're interesting choices, but he wants to make the choices. He doesn't want the choices to be random. So what happened when this card came out? The Timmys didn't like it because it was too spiky, and the Spikes didn't like it because it's too Timmy. You know, that the card, like, but trying to make different people happy, we made nobody happy. So lesson number 15 is design the component for the audience is intended for.
Right, so design the components for the audience it is intended for. And this is really what I want to address with the balance of luck and skill. Is a TCG luck based? Yes. Is a TCG skill based? Yes. You can combine cards together that do a little bit of both, but like Mark Rosewood addressed, you don't satisfy both sides of the table here. So what you need to do is separate those two components into two different cards so you can satisfy both parties. Or you can go down an extreme route and just say that your game doesn't contain one of these elements, where that means you're either attracting a game full of spikes where it's very competitive based and very structured and very ordered, very balanced, or you are attracting a load of Timmys where it is all just fun, wacky, goofy type of game style. Both are enticing to different players. So for me personally, I feel like I am the Johnny in this. I like to find the cards and build combinations that nobody else has found, or very few people have found. My TCG decks need to express something within myself, something that I have discovered and then I want to trial. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But let me know in the comment section below whether you identify as a Timmy, a Johnny, or a Spike. Now, another thing I wanted to point out when I was re-watching this about Timmy, Johnny, and Spike is what these characters remind me of. Let's take a look back at the Yu-Gi-Oh anime. Now you've got your main three characters. You've got Yugi, you've got Joey, and you've got Kaiba. So for me, I see Johnny as Yugi. Yugi does express himself through his deck. He always talks about the heart of his cards and his grandpa's deck, and it's all about his combinations through the Dark Magician and all that, and he is very Johnny-esque. Joey, on the other hand, is a Timmy. He is all about the excitement. In season 2, he leaned more into the chance type cards. You have the Time Wizard, which is a toss of the coin to see whether your opponent's board gets wiped or your board gets wiped. Joey also had the Graceful Dice card and the Skull Dice card. He was very chance based. He would go in for attacks. He could either randomly lower your attack by so much or randomly increase his own attack by that much. He was very much a Timmy type player. And then of course you've got Kaiba. Kaiba was blatantly all about power. He was about his rare blue eyes white dragons that he had, and everything should be skill based, and he was the best, and he was going to prove something with his amazing deck of cards and his amazing skill and how he could overcome all of these other players. Now, I don't think it was a coincidence that Yu-Gi-Oh! The anime addressed these three types of players, because when you are watching it, you could associate yourself with one of these types of players. And that way, you would be more enticed to play the game because you go, I want to play like Joey, I want to play like Yugi, or I want to play like Seto Kaiba. So I just thought that was an interesting note, and we'll move on. So I didn't have plans for making this video when I released this poll on the Shard TCG YouTube channel. So this actually tied in very nicely. So I asked, Are TCGs more fun with or without dice rolls and coin flipping? Which obviously ties into luck-based games. So this worked out quite nicely. I've already done the research. So with 255 votes after one day, we've got, yes, I love beating the odds with 35%. But we are defeated by that with, no, I don't like chance, for 46%. So the slight majority believe that a TCG shouldn't have dice rolls or coin flips, where we've got the two remainder votes being yes but only dice rolls with 16% and yes but only coin flips for 4%. So there is a 20% minority of people that only like one or the other. But as you can see, it is fairly close with a 46% versus a 35% for or against having additional chance in a TCG. Of course, we always have to remember that when we are drawing cards, we are creating randomness in the game. So there is luck in that aspect. After that, people want to be able to know exactly what they are doing when they are playing the cards. If we take a little look at the comments, we'll see what people are actually saying personally about this type of style in games. So Nice Guy 66 says, personally, I love rolling of the dice and randomization, but I feel proper TCG doesn't need them. So much easier to just have a deck to play anywhere, no extra accessories. And this is something I have pointed out before, so thank you, Nice Guy, for bringing this up today. You don't want additional clutter in your TCG, so it is very useful to actually get rid of that randomness, not because you don't like randomness, but because you want the game to be convenient. We already talked about earlier in the video, it is great having the card game where you can just put it in your pocket and then you are off, you are ready to go. So Just One Pack says, I actually like the coin flip in Pokemon, and since I am a Dice Master fan, for me, it is more how you use it than whether you use it. And I think this is a good point because you could be using a coin flip every single turn and it gets a bit tedious and it gets a bit much. So it's about finding the right balance for your TCG. Now, Alexandra Novikov says, dice are nice, but they're extra material to bring to your games, which what we've already addressed. So avoid if possible. If not possible, I think the influence of randomization should be pretty low, something like 70% skill and 30% luck. Now, I've never thought about putting this into a strict percentage, but I think that is something interesting to address. So here's another thing I want you to address in the comments section. What percentage of luck do you feel goes into a TCG? Alexander says 70% skill, 30% luck. I just want straight up numbers. How do you feel about it? And I know sometimes it's tough when we're going with feelings, but we can tend to get a generalization of how people feel, whether it should be straight up 50-50. So every time I do a skilled move, there is a random move that goes with it. Or do you feel like it should be primarily skill, where most of the time I am doing skilled moves, but then there is room for that element of randomness, whether it is in an additional card draw, a roll of the dice, a flip of the coin, whatever you think it might be. So before we move on to the final article of this video, I'm going to do a coin flip. And if I get heads, I want you to hit that like button. And if I get tails, I want you to hit that dislike button. Okay? Are we ready? I'm a little bit scared now. 3, 2, 1. Oh, Ella heads. Oh, thank goodness. Right, just to be completely honest, that is one take. I haven't redone it over and over again trying to get heads, so I'm a little bit relieved by that. So thank you for hitting that like button. Okay, so this final article is on the card market, luck and skill in card games. So players often dichotomize as far as luck and skill are concerned and think of games as either full of luck or full of skill. However, I'd like to show you that these two features are independent. Before we go into examples, let me provide two simple definitions that I'm using below. So skill, the ability to act with strategic and tactical foresight, planning or execution, having control over the outcome. Yes, that is a good definition of skill. Luck, Variables one cannot control, experienced as random and unrelated to skill, changing or affecting the outcome through means out of players' control. So a lot of skill, little to no luck. Chess is commonly cited as the primary example of the game. That is because we can see all of the pieces, we can see how they move. There is really no element of randomness unless you fail to foresee it yourself. So next we'll move on to no skill, a lot of luck. So rolling the dice. You throw the dice in the air and wait for the outcome, hoping the number is as high as possible. However, you've got no control over the final outcome. And I think this can be adjusted in trading card games, in D&D, things like that, where you have like player sheets or cards with natural skills, and then you're just rolling for bonuses. This way you can mitigate the luck and make it primarily skill based, probably that 70-30 that we were talking about just earlier. So I would say, yeah, it probably would feel about 70% skill, 30% luck. You go, okay, I have good odds here, I just need to roll above a 7 out of a d20. Great, I could do that. Now, I've just remembered a fun added bonus to dice rolls. There is a psychology with dice rolls when if a player rolls a dice and they want a low number, they will roll it very gently. And if they want a higher number, they will roll it hard, as if somehow that influences the dice. So watch out for that next time you're playing a game. See if subconsciously you have been doing this, or observe another player. See if they are rolling the dice gently if they need a low number, or see if they're rolling the dice hard if they need a high number. It adds nothing to the game, but if anything, it is just a fun observation and a good example of player psychology. Now, the final example is full control over the outcome, yet still only luck. Rock, paper, scissors can be cited here. While yes, there are better and worse RPS players, game theory wise, there is no best strategy. Now, I think rock, paper, scissors is a good example of this. You have a 33.33333 recurring chance because there is only 3 options. Input one result and the output randomness of your opponent determines whether you win or lose. Nice and simple. There are no other rules to the game. So finally, the article asks the question, why do games incorporate luck by design? And I'm going to go on a little bit of a mini rant here. So if you want to read the rest of this article, feel free to check out the link in the description below. But I just want to talk about the reason we add luck to games. And that reason is because if everything was purely skill-based, games would simply be boring. The highest skill player would win every single time, and then everybody would stop playing, including the highest skill player. They would be bored because they're always winning. Other players would be bored because they're always losing. Other players leave the game. The winner would then have nobody to play with and quit the game. Nobody wins. Incorporating randomness where there is always a chance of the underdog coming back is the best way of playing a TCG. Now you might say, well, I'll incorporate lots and lots of randomness because then it's more fun for all the players. But designing a TCG is all about the balance. If we don't balance it where it is still primarily skill, then you'll start to lose players that way, because players don't want to play a game where they have no influence. And I feel like I'm just repeating myself from what we've learned throughout this article, but there are some people who tend to skip through articles and they might want this little summary. And this bit down at the bottom here, this actually reminded me of a game I played very recently. They were lucky, but I played well. And I've got a little story about this, and it's not quite the same. We both played well, and whoever lost was going to feel pretty unlucky. Now, in this scenario, spoilers, I actually won. So that was quite nice. But I didn't feel like I deserved the victory. And I'll tell you why. I was playing the Digimon card game. And in Digimon, you have your shield cards down the side, your security cards. And I got to my final security card. My opponent was ready to take it out. They didn't have any security cards left. I was one away from victory on their turn. I had made the mistake during my turn where I left myself pretty much unguarded, undefended, so they were able to just attack me, and it looked like they had victory in their grasp. And they were taking away each of my securities, and they get to my final security card, and that security card suspended one of their Digimon, and that Digimon I was able to target. I suspended the last Digimon, which was gonna give them the victory by attacking me directly. And if any other card was in that slot, the odds are they would have won. I can't think of many other cards that would have helped me in that scenario. So it is incredibly lucky that I had that. But the game was that close, we were that neck and neck, that whoever won felt a huge relief and huge satisfaction, and it makes those great stories we talk about. But the losing player, so gutted that they lost by such a fine margin. And I just want to add that that is what makes TCGs great. Because those stories of complete dominance aren't good stories. I could tell you lots of times where I've played a TCG and I just went right from the get-go. I did this and did this and did this, and I wiped them out, and yeah, that was great. Oh wow, that's amazing. But when I tell you those close call stories, they have a little bit something special about them. And that's what we really want out of TCGs. So just remember to incorporate randomness just enough that players will get some of these stories. If they get these stories all of the time, then it is no good because it becomes normalized. You want these rare stories that stick in their mind, and they will tell them over and over again. And when they tell other players these stories, then those players might want to move on and play that game as well. And that's how the community actually grows. So just have a think about it. I hope you have responded in the comment section with those couple of questions that I've asked, because I'm really curious about what you think about the luck versus skill in TCGs. And I hope to see you next time. I've been James. This has been a TCG R&D, and I hope you've learned something today. Goodbye.